Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm joined here with Danny again. We're going to be doing June's subscription box. Danny, do you want to walk us through what we got here?
Yeah, of course. It should be a fun one this month.
Now, because Danny and I are filming this a little bit early, we don't actually have the t-shirt that we're going to be including with your guys' boxes. So in your box, you will receive a t-shirt. It's an exclusive design only for subscription box members. So we're excited to share that with you. But other than that, Danny, should we go ahead and crack this thing open?
Of course. Let's go ahead.
Fit it all in the box this time. Here we go.
Yeah, so this month we have a really special blue graphite opal.
Yeah, I like this one. It's got a really kind of mysterious look to it. It's quite subtle and just, I don't know.
It's got a nice orange hue to it at certain lights, so it looks really cool.
Yeah, so this kind of like slate grayish blue color looks real mysterious, and then yeah, some colorful highlights. And you get the light just right. I like it a lot.
Next up, we have some larger meteorite shavings this month.
Yeah, love working with meteorite shavings. They just add that little kind of just glare, that metallic reflection that they put on the ring. I love working with those.
Then next up, we have our neon blue glow powder. It's a really cool glow powder. It just is a nice bright blue.
Yeah, I like these a lot. It glows brighter than what you would be able to get if you were to take white powder that glows blue and then add pigment to it. So it's kind of the best of both worlds because it's already pre-pigmented and glows a bit brighter.
Okay. Then this month, we're making our ring on a titanium ring blank liner.
Yep, titanium is a super solid material to work with. The only challenge with it is because it's a bit softer, you don't want to sand down through it too much if you want to keep those bevels nice and crisp. So that's kind of the challenge and the thing to focus on with these. But other than that, they're super solid, they're strong as could be, and very lightweight and comfortable.
Yeah, I'll be doing my best to keep those bevels because they do look nice.
Yeah.
And then the color pigment this month is a hot chocolate. So combined with the blue, we're going for something kind of fancy with it.
Yeah, so this is kind of like weird. I know what you guys are thinking, like hot chocolate and blue is kind of a weird mix. Think of this as more of like a bronze metallic that we're trying to add to this. The goal is to make the blue really dark, almost like a charcoal gray. And when we combine these two, we'll show you the color samples later. We're going to be able to get a really nice effect that has this cool kind of bronze metallic, just a little shimmer to it.
Yeah, it should look really nice when paired with the opal this month.
Yeah, great. All right, well, there is a rundown of the materials. Should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's do it. So our first step today, we're going to be mixing our color pigment and the glow powder. So for this one, Patrick and I did kind of a color sample. As you can see, we did quite a few different mixtures to try and get the right proportions of each color pigment and the glow powder. So what we were going for is a really dark daytime color. We want it to be almost kind of like a gray, black, charcoal color. And then we want it to, in the light, in certain lights and angles, catch like a really nice blue hue that's kind of deep in there. And then also a really nice coppery bronze metallic look as well. Since we're going for kind of a space cadet theme, we wanted the ring to have a space vibe feeling, and we felt that if it was a dark daytime but at certain angles and lights you could see a nice blue or a nice coppery feeling, it would give a nice space feel to the ring. So that's kind of what we're going for. That's why we did so many color samples, trying to get that idea to function. And we did a really small batch. That's why I'm having to make more of it right now. So first up, we're gonna go ahead and just add some of our hot chocolate color pigment. I'm gonna warn you right now that I ended up adding way too much of the hot chocolate color pigment. So I had to use way more of the neon blue glow powder than I anticipated. So if you wanna save yourself a little bit of time and effort, make sure to go light on the hot chocolate, especially at first. You can always add more later, but I really ended up using way too much of that hot chocolate right off of the bat. So it took me quite a few tries to match the color that Patrick and I were going for. So I just kept adding more and more of the neon glow powder. I ended up using basically all of the neon glow powder to get the right color. So yeah, go ahead and save yourself a little bit of time and add a little bit less of the hot chocolate glow powder. With this test, what we're doing is just adding a little bit of the medium CA adhesive, putting on the color mixture that we currently have, and then I add a little bit more of the super thin CA adhesive, and then I hit it with accelerator just so that we can see what the color looks like after it cures and after it mixes with the CA adhesive, because it looks really different dry than it does once it's been once it has absorbed some of the CA adhesive. So that's kind of what we're going for right here, is just to test what it looks like after you add the CA adhesive. Another important part of this test is you want to test it after each addition you make to your mixture, just so that you don't end up adding too much of one thing. Try and go in small increments. That's why I ended up doing another like 5 or 6 tests, is because I kept just adding a little bit more of the blue color pigment. So just go step by step, take your time. We just use this metal block because it's easy to clean off. You can just use a razor blade and scrape off your old tests. As you can see, I also accidentally glued our metal block to our cutting block, which was a shame because we really like how this cutting mat looks, and it's hard to take the CA off of it, but it is what it is. So just be careful as you do it that you have something underneath that you don't care too much about. As you can see here, I finally got a color that I'm happy with. It's pretty close to the color that Patrick and I originally settled on. So I'm gonna go ahead and proceed with the ring. It's not 100% match because it's a really difficult thing to color match 100%, but it's fairly close and I'm happy with how it looks. Our next step today, we're gonna take our meteorite shavings and we're gonna go ahead and find some that just fit the look that we're going for. We don't want the meteorite to be an overwhelming feature in this ring. We want it to just kind of be almost like a background or a highlight feature. So we're going to find pieces that have a little bit of girth to them, and then I'll find some that are a little longer that I really like, but I want them to be smaller, so we'll just cut them down until they're all fairly small pieces of meteorite shavings, because we're just going to be adding them to the ring as a highlight feature. So like I said, just look for some smaller ones that have a little bit of girth to them. That way when you add them to the ring, they're still noticeable, but they don't become overwhelming. The meteorite is fairly easy to cut. I just use a pair of regular scissors and I cut them into the right size that I want. Sometimes when you do cut the meteorite, if you're not careful, it'll kind of just fly away on you. So sometimes I'll put a finger on each side of the scissors and kind of hold both sides of the meteorite. That way, when you cut through, you're pressing it against the scissor and they don't fly away. All right, next up, let's prep our lathe. We're gonna go ahead and add our ring mandrel, tighten that in there, and then put the electrical tape on the ring mandrel. Since we're working with titanium this month, I like to use electrical tape just in case I don't put the ring on there quite right and it will scratch the inside if it moves while you're sanding or dremeling. So I always add the electrical tape just to kind of eliminate that possibility of scratching the inside. Just because it looks really nice when it comes, and I want the inside to stay nice and highly polished. Our first step when we're inlaying this ring is we're going to take our medium CA adhesive and we're going to just add some into the ring, let it spread to a relatively thin layer, and then you're just going to essentially pour in the opal. I like to try and get a good amount in there. You don't need to fill the entire ring with the opal. You want to leave some low spots so that we can add the meteorite shavings later on. So after I've let the CA spread and I've added the opal, I just take my color pigment and I spread that over the top of everywhere that I've added the opal to lock it into place. Sometimes you can go and add more of the opal before you lock in where you are, but I don't like having the pieces fall out, so easier is just to cover them with the color pigment, and that kind of locks them into place. So that's why I do it the way I do it, because I hate when they fall out. Okay, now that we have added our opal and we've covered up the entire inlay channel with at least some of the color pigment and some of the opal, we're gonna go ahead and add our meteorite shavings that we've cut down to the right size. To add the meteorite shavings, all we're gonna do is add a dab of CA adhesive. I use the medium in a low spot where you would like to add it. So I just do a small dab and then I take the tweezers and I add that piece of meteorite. And then we'll lock it into place with our color pigment as well. So with this, all you're looking for are places where there's enough of a gap between the bottom of the inlay material and the top of the ring blank. If you don't have enough space, you just won't be able to see the meteorite. So make sure it's a low enough spot that the meteorite will stay in the ring. As I was adding the meteorite chunks, I decided to fill in the rest of the low spots with crushed opal. I did this just because I really like the contrast between the larger pieces of the opal and the really finely crushed opal. So that's what I did, is I took some of the remaining opal that I had and I crushed it up really finely so that I could fill in any remaining low spots. To inlay the crushed opal, I do it really similarly to how we inlaid the meteorite chunks. I take a little bit of the medium CA adhesive and I put it into the low spots. I sprinkle on the crushed opal and then I just lock it into place with the color pigment. I found that that's just the best way to do it. After I filled in all of the places that I felt I could add that crushed opal mixture, I went ahead and wet the entire ring with the super thin CA adhesive, and then I added a little bit more of the color pigment, and then I made sure all of that was saturated with the CA adhesive as well so that we have a nice even color, and then I hit it with our accelerator, and we're gonna go ahead and let the ring cure for 10 to 15 minutes before we keep going. Our next step today is just to take our Dremel and Dremel everything back down to flush like we do with essentially all of our rings. With this one, since we want to be extra careful to keep that bevel on the titanium, you just want to be really careful as you Dremel that you keep the Dremel as level as possible. That way you end up having the bevels at the end. So as you Dremel down, just be extra careful to hold your hand steady and level. Sometimes I find it hard to keep it level and really steady with one hand, so I'll reach over with my other hand and hold the Dremel with two hands just to keep it extra steady as I go around the ring. Now that we have the ring flush again, I like to do a quick sanding with 220 just to expose any air bubbles that are just under the surface and make sure that there's no weird holes that were kind of covered up by a little bit of CA adhesive or anything. So I do a quick 220 sand, and then I'll go ahead and clean the ring off, dry it off, and then I'll take my razor blade and we'll cut out any of the air pockets that we can see. And then I like to clean off the excess glue off of the bevel here, especially with titanium, just so that I don't have to do that afterwards and I can keep a nice even finish on the ring. Once we've done that, I'll go ahead and take some of the extra color pigment that we have, and I'm gonna fill in any of those air bubbles with color pigment. So to do that, it's really simple, but I'll just put a little bit of the color pigment on the hole, and then I'll use my finger to kind of smash the color pigment down into the hole to make sure it's all the way in there, and to just wipe off any excess color pigment. Because we're not trying to build the ring back up, we're just trying to fill in the holes. So you don't want to have a lot of excess color pigment on the ring before you add your CA adhesive. So once we've filled up all of those holes with some extra color pigment, we're going to go ahead and do a final layer of CA adhesive just to lock in that color pigment, fill those holes, and make sure we have a nice even surface to work with. Once that CA adhesive cures, we're going to go ahead and use our Dremel again just to make sure everything's nice and flush. I just do a quick once over around the ring, make sure I don't have any huge peaks of super thin CA adhesive left. Once we do that, we're gonna go ahead and do our final hand sand. So with this, I just did 220 through 1200 grit sandpaper. So 220, 500, 1000, and 1200 grit. And we just did a quick sanding with that. In between each step, I made sure to do a quick sand on the bevel, just so that the bevels have the same finish as the top of the ring. It can look a little funny if the top has a somewhat brushed look and then the bevels have that really shiny finish to them. So to make sure that it's all an even, uniform finish, I just do a quick sand. And as you do that, be really careful to just keep it at the same angle as the bevel and just do a quick light sand, because you don't want to get rid of the bevels, you're just trying to clean them up and give them a uniform look to the top. Now that I'm happy with how the ring looks and how the finish is, I'm gonna go ahead and do our final polish. Today I opted to just do the step 2 Astrotech polish. I could have probably gone with steps 1, 2, and 3, but I felt that step 2 was all we really needed to give this ring a nice finish. All right, now that we're done making the ring and polishing it, let's talk about the finished product. So first up, the opal ended up being a lot more blue than I anticipated. We had expected it to stay really dark, but for whatever reason in the sanding and the polishing steps, the opal really shines blue. It's not a bad thing, it just kind of was a little different than what we had anticipated it looking like. But overall, I'm really happy with how this ring turned out. I like the small pieces of meteorite, those little highlights that you can just catch the light with every once in a while. And then I also really like this color pigment that we achieved. I like how most of the time it's a really understated kind of gray charcoal look. And then in the right light, you get a really nice kind of coppery metallic look. And then you'll also get some hints of blue spread throughout the ring. I think it looks really nice with the color and the opals and the meteorite. The three of them really work together well to give us a nice kind of space theme and feel, whilst remaining somewhat understated, but really cool if you take the time to look at it a little bit closer. Thanks for watching this month, guys. Remember to go ahead and like and subscribe, as well as head over to Facebook and join our ring maker group, so that you can share your progress and some of your ring creations. It's a lot of fun to look at those and learn from other ring makers. So thanks again, guys. Have a great month.